Hello and welcome to the first episode of Forging Ahead. I'm Aviv Manoach and this is a show about tabletop role-playing games where I discuss the shenanigans of my home group and prepare for their next adventure. You can join me each week live on twitch.tv/isel.me or subscribe to the podcast audio on dwarfcast.net. This is the first episode. Hello, thank you for listening or watching. In this show, what I'm going to do is talk about my home group, where I'm going to tell you what we are playing, who are our characters, and I'm going to try and prep for our next session or couple of sessions or figure out what exactly is going on. If you want to join me in the chats in the next sessions, you can do so on Twitch, and if you like to listen to it in a later date, you can do that too. Who am I? My name is Aviv. Like I said, I've been gaming for the past 20 years, more or less 18 years, and since about 10 years ago I started to try and make my hobbies into a profession. Not only in writing games and publishing games, but also in production of media. I've been employed in the advertising industry. I have been making podcasts and live videos, and I've been part of the On the Shoulders of Dwarves team for the past several years. We ran crowdfunding together, we ran a couple of gaming live stream together, and generally I'm the guy that when you need something technical done, you call me. You may have heard me from time to time on the show. I've been in the latest episode 45 with Uri, where we talked about player missing sessions, and on that episode, I talked about my game, my home game, which it's strange to call it a home game because we are playing in text chat in Discord. Specifically, each week we have a session on Fridays, and all my players and I join a Discord server, and we have a couple of channels where we do a thing. And I've one of the listeners rather, emailed us afterward and asked a couple of questions about how I run the game and how the old text chatting works. And I actually wrote a rather lengthy post about it. So if you're interested in the technical aspects of how I run the game, I will put a link in the show notes and you can read all about it. Okay, so what are we playing? We are playing a game called Wonders, Heroes of Tomorrow, which is an adaptation of Masks: A New Generation by Magpie Games. Like Masks, we play a group of teenage superheroes that are caught in this conflict between wanting to help people and wanting to come on their own as heroes, and outside, not really outside, but the other people in the world telling them how to do things and what to be, and sometimes try to stop them from being the heroes they are trying to be. Now, in Masks, you have a specific setting called Elsion City, and which is a very classic superhero comic book setting that had heroes present in the world for the past almost 100 years. And there were the superhero generation, the gold generation, silver generation, and so forth. And that's one way to play the game. Now, Magpie Games have since published several different playsets, they are calling them, that present with different other scenarios that you can use in your home game. What we did with Wonders is writing, or rather repurposing a system from the Fate role-playing game that allow you to create your own urban environment to play with. We have a central premise. The premise is that in the Wonders world, people only found out about other people having superpowers about 10 years ago. There were always people with powers, but they were in the shadows, hidden, trying to do things behind the scenes, a type of masquerade-like thing. But 10 years ago, there was a war called the War of Might. And something happened that revealed the existence of superpowered people to the general public. Now, as part of the city creation rules from Wonders, the group decided what this event was and how it affected the people of the world, and specifically the heroes of the world. So in our game, the campaign is titled, as you can see, Collecting Dust. It's a pun, I'm not going to explain it, it's an inner joke thing. But we decided that there were a malfunction in the Large Hadron Collider. You can look it up, it was a real thing in 2008. And this malfunction caused a fissure to open up in a part of Israel where we live. And this, the fissure caused all kinds of problems, and one of which was outsidery, horror-y, Lovecraftian things escaping from another dimension into our world. This required the cooperation, of the superpowered individuals of the world to come together and stop them. And they did that. They stopped the invasion from the fissure, and afterward an international agency was founded to secure the fissure, and they built a prison called the Boar around the fissure that after enacting laws about people with powers, they are imprisoning the individuals that break those laws in the Boar to keep fighting the things that are trying to escape from the fissure. So our city is located about 10 kilometers from this fissure, outside the international demilitarized zone, and I have here a nice map of the city that if you are watching the video version you can see. It's not a big city. I don't know how to compare it to international other cities, but it has about 40,000 people in it, and and as part of the game creation, we also, beside the backstory and the city itself, we decided about several key locations that exist in the city, as well as several key figures that our game is going to revolve around, at least in the earlier stages. Okay, so before I move on to tell you about some of the plot elements and what I'm thinking, I will introduce the characters themselves. We started with 4 players, but we had a player that had to leave in the last sessions, and we got another new player. So we had 3 characters that are with us from the beginning, and another character that was introduced in the last session. The characters are Oron, the Nova, with telekinesis and telepathy powers. He was taken by the military at the age of 5 or 6 rather, and because he was considered the strongest telepath in the entire country, and so he was placed under state supervision and got into specialized program, and generally the government is really afraid of him, so they are trying to keep close watch on him. This started to change since the beginning of the game because he joined the team. He's less reliant on the government assistance he received, and it's also part of the plot we started to play. Amraphel, the Janus, has supernatural senses and impossible mobility. A couple of years ago, he was caught in a battle between some other hero and entity from the Fissure, or rather, someone affected by an entity from the Fissure, and he got caught in some kind of blast or energy wave, and got shape-shifting powers that he transformed between normal human person form and a kind of blue beast James Cameron avatar-like form. This is this player's take on the Janus. Instead of having like a proper costume, he switches between the forms, and while he's in the hero form, the Amraphel, he has his senses and mobility. He can climb wall and jump great distance and stuff like that. On the one hand, it's kind of there is two sides to this kind of to his character, because generally you want the Janus to have a costume because the story of the character revolves around people finding out who is beneath the costume. But if we take a classic Janus example like Spider-Man, Peter Parker has all his powers even when he's not in costume. So if there is a dangerous situation, he can do something about it. That's not true about Amraphel. Amraphel cannot use his powers when he's not in his hero form, and it takes a bit of time for him to change. It's not instantaneous. So that's the limitation from one side we put on this character, and also a kind of advantage because he technically doesn't have a costume. But I told the player that if the need arises, we are going to stretch and to check the limits of his shape-shifting. Does wounds appear on his body after the hero form is hurt, for example? Is there a way for the villains to snap him out of the hero form? Another question. We are going to play and find out. The third character that started the campaign is the Flying Fist, called Tom. She is the beacon with martial arts and acrobatics. Technically, she has very minor air control powers that she uses to in order to fight and do the acrobatics thing. So she taught herself how to use those air powers in order to fight and jump around and do all kind of crazy things. I just realized I didn't change the title. Never mind. Not right now. Okay, and the last character that joined us in the last session is Seabreeze, the outsider. She has stunning beauty and radical shift-changing. She is an entity from a virtual world that somehow entered our reality. We played this scene. The players at the beginning of last yesterday's session. They are walking at night in an alley, and the moon turns purple, and there are lightnings, and some kind of weird ship-like thing appears in the middle of the road, and shapeshifts into a garbage bin, like a big container-like garbage bin, because the character has the move Kirbycraft, and she took the chameleon circuit, or I don't remember the exact name of it, as one of the powers, so the craft can chameleon plating. Chameleon circuit is a Doctor Who thing. So the craft can appear as something more normal, let's call it that. And the character itself is also, his original form is also very alien, but because of its radical shape-shifting, she could transform and become more human-like. So we had this whole scene about it appearing out of thin air, and the characters are very afraid of it, but Seabreeze changes form to be more human-like, and they start asking her questions, and she doesn't know where she is because she didn't even know there was anything outside of her virtual reality. And we are going to explore the place where she comes from in the future. Those are our cast, and for the last bit of the show, about 10 minutes, I will talk about the overarching story elements we already established, and a bit of my planning for the future. When we wrote the how your team came together, it was established that the first time they fought together, they uncovered some sort of government conspiracy to abduct very high-profile wonders or heroes in the city, and they prevented the abduction of one of those heroes. Fought a couple of dangerous enemies, trashed a part of the city museum, stuff like that. In our first session, they infiltrated a radio station that was taken over by another high-profile wonder called Star Power. And Star Power, like them, stumbled upon this conspiracy because he himself was the victim of an attempted abduction. And so he was sure that the government tries to hide the fact that a bunch of those wonders are being kidnapped by government officials. This comes together with another things we established in the backstory of the Flying Fist, that her brother, which actually has very strong wind manipulation powers, was taken by the government, by the international force that is controlling a superpowered individual in the world called Seraph, and so from the perspective of the characters, there is something very wrong. People are being taken from the streets, but nonetheless they stopped Star Power from actually blowing up the radio station, and afterward he disappeared. Now this is the grand scheme of things, and we actually didn't touch of any of that since the first session. What I'm trying to do with this campaign is to actually strengthen my weakness in writing side stories, because in most of my campaigns I have I have very intricate and well made story arc that go through the entire campaign, and they come to a nice closing at the end, and the group enjoys them. But my weakness is in writing smaller, more specialized, more character driven side stories. So this is what I'm trying to do for this game. I'm my idea is to take an element from each one of the characters and make some kind of story thread around it. So Oron, for example, for the first in the first session, the player decided that while he was trying to get to the radio station, the van with the squad that was accompanied him got into a car accident, and they were injured or hurt, or he thought even dead. But when he got back to the base, he found out that there wasn't a car accident. The entire squad just disappeared. And the official statement on the matter is that they went AWOL. They just took their gear and left. But he is sure that he witnessed a car accident, and he doesn't know why. So this is one of the threads we are going to investigate. Another thing is that Amraphel has a close friend called Alex, and her mother is a researcher in the antiquities department. There is a large dig site in the city of ancient Canaanite artifacts, and she works there. And Alex tells Amraphel that she heard her parents talk about thugs that threaten her to give them one of the artifacts they dug up in the dig site. And Alex, while she doesn't approve of Amraphel using his powers and going into the city and fighting people, because she's very worried about her mother, she asks him to go and try to look out and find out what's going on. And that's one of the things we played in the last session. And he heard them talking with her mother about something called the tablet of Anat, which is something they heard about in another scene. And her mother was very protective and aggressive and stood her ground against the thugs. He also found out that the thugs themselves are employed by a character they met in one of the previous sessions called Rave, which organizes I call it a club because it's based on Fight Club. It's in an underground fighting club for superpowered people. People come there and fight to prove their mental stuff. And the team heard rumors about this in school and are trying to find this club because they think it could lead them to a new lead to find star power. So we have the Oron memory accident plotline, and Amraphel I forgot the word I'm trying to say. Amraphel's antiquities dig site plotline. And the entire party is involved in the trying to find the Fight Club, the Fight Club, the underground Fight Club thing plotline. Okay. I don't really have a specific idea for the Flying Fist yet. So far, she's just part of the general story of the other characters. But since the disciplined brother is part of a backstory, she will maybe be tied up to the bigger storyline. I will have to think about that. The next episode because this episode was so much about introducing the backstory and what we are playing and the introducing the show itself. I'm going to do less prepping in the actual episode and more talking in general terms. But what we have on the table right now is finding the Fight Club, where they investigating the location. Couple of sessions ago, they ran into a new person that they didn't know, they haven't met before, called Hexen, with some powers they don't understand. Hexen herself seems to be looking for this tablet of Anat. So now there are two separate groups that try to find this tablet, and all that the party knows is that it's a clay tablet supposed to be written about a story called the Baal Cycle. The Baal Cycle is a Canaanite mythological epoch. A real thing, you can look it up on Wikipedia, but of course the party doesn't know why those people are looking for it. My idea is for the upcoming 1 or 2 session is that they are going to find and participate in the Fight Club, and this is going to be a nexus to tie up some of the other plot line. They are going to see part of the crew of Star Power. They are going to find some of the crew that works with Exen. A lot of the plot lines are going to intermingle and tie together in this scene at the Fight Club, and we will see what's happening after that. So this is this is the end of the show for today. In the next episode, I'll catch you up on what happened with the group in the gaming session, and we'll discuss how to proceed. I specifically want to find, to think about specific plot lines for the Flying Fist and Starbreeze. I have a couple of the ideas of what to do with Starbreeze. I think of using some villain to try to bring stuff from the virtual world into our reality, stuff like that to mix between the two realities. I think that will be fun. In the meantime, you can catch me on Twitter at Isel. Check out more of my games on the Vano Games to Amaze page on Facebook, and of course join the On the Shoulders of Dwarves community on Facebook as well. Thank you for listening or watching. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye for now. Have a nice day.